Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Gurt, and I've been playing a lot of Mountain Blade 2 Bannerlord recently. It's a great game that's been receiving loads of developer support, is fairly addictive, but it can be a little difficult to understand exactly how to get started. However, I've noticed a few things about character creation in the early game that I haven't really seen anybody on YouTube talk about, so I've decided to make a couple of videos to showcase them. In this video, we're going to talk a bit about choosing your background so that you get the skills and equipment that you need to help you get started. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started on that. So what we're going to be working on will work with any of the factions. We don't have to pick any one faction, so if you just absolutely love the Valandians, then go ahead and pick a Valandian. If you absolutely love one of the other 5 factions, whose names I don't know because you can probably infer who my favorite faction is, then you can go ahead and, maybe a little wrong, but you can pick them too. That's fine. Now, the game runs a little slow on my computer, so you'll have to forgive some of these load times here, but here we are. So, like I was saying, it does not matter which of these factions we choose, so I'll just go ahead and make an Imperial. Why not? Now, one of the big things here is that people don't know which choices matter and which choices don't, and the game doesn't exactly make that very clear. So, for instance, everything that I'm looking at right now with character customization, body, face, eyes, nose, mouth, hair, markings, all that stuff, none of it matters at all. Next, this is what matters, is we need to make sure that we choose our background so that we build the character that we want to build. So, as we go through and we choose our different backgrounds, we very quickly notice, there it goes. As we go through and we choose our different backgrounds, we notice that we get these focus points put into various skills, as well as an attribute point put into one of my attributes. Now, none of these decisions are necessarily wrong, but there are a couple of decisions that are a little bit more, in my opinion, powerful than the others. So, those things that we want to focus in are primarily going to, in order of importance, rely around getting 2 points in medicine, 2 points in each of the 3 melee combat skills, and then 1 point potentially in Steward. Now, that last point in Steward, it's not the end of the world if we don't get that. But we definitely want the 2 points in medicine, and we definitely want to get 2 points in at least one of these, if not 2 or all 3 of them. So, to that end, I need to understand a little bit about how these backgrounds work. So one of the most important things that I haven't seen anybody talk about is how the backgrounds for a couple of later choices, actually one in particular, depends entirely on where our parents are from or what our parents are about. So, for instance, if I choose that my parents are a landlord's retainers, in addition to the attribute point and the 2 focus points, and then the 10 skill points that come with those 2 focus points, I notice that my adolescence is going to be herded the sheep, worked in the village smithy, repaired projects, gathered herbs in the wild, hunted small game, or sold produce at the market. But then, if I go back and I say, oh no, my parents weren't nobles, they were vagabonds. They were the lowest of the low. And that gave them, what is that? Yeah, okay, roguery and throwing. So, then if I do that, these are all the same, which is, whatever. But then all of these changed. And not only did the flavor change, but it also changed the skill points. At the town watch training grounds, with the alley gangs, at the docks and building sites, in the markets and... I don't know how to say that word. Reading and studying, or working at the stables. All right. And we'll notice that as I click through those are different skill points than what we got from our first choice there. Now, that's nothing crazy, but what we want to do is we want to try to make sure that we can get our 2 intelligence and then our 2 in our skills up here. So let's see. I don't believe that medicine comes in any of these. It doesn't. So then my choice here is only done to affect my adolescence choice. Now, I can get a point of medicine. These are always the same. Leadership, brawn, detail, numbers, people, and horses. All of those are always the same. And skill with horses happens to always give medicine. It is awesome. Unless you're building a character that is just going to be on foot always, all the time, forever, choosing skill with horses for the point of medicine and point of riding is excellent. I've got a point of polearm. I've got 2 points in horses or riding, and I've got 1 point in medicine. I need at least 1 more point in medicine, and I can get it here if I choose gathered herbs in the wild. That also gives me a point of scouting, which is a pretty decent skill that can take a while to raise, but raising scouting is, while it takes a long time, is not hard to do, and that's an important factor to consider in this, is that which skills are hard to raise and which skills are easy to raise. We are going to gather herbs in the wild. Okay. So, next. Yes. The youth choice is probably the most important choice that I'm going to be making in the early game, because not only does it determine my focus points that I'm getting, but it also determines my starting equipment, which is a fact that I have not heard anybody actually mention at all. So, joined a commander's staff gives me my tactics, my cunning, and my steward, but as far as equipment goes, I can see that it is giving me a shield and a polearm and what appears to be, yes, that is a sword, although I think I am currently stabbing it through my own back. Trained with the cavalry gives me a spear, a sword, and a shield. Stood guard with the garrisons gives me a bow, arrows, a sword, and a shield, so I lost that spear. Rode with the scouts, sword, bow, arrows. Trained with the infantry, sword, spear, no shield. Okay, so if I really wanted a shield, then this might not be the best choice. And then joined the skirmishers gives me a sword and not 1 but 2, yes, 2 packs of javelins, which are throwing weapons. So that's pretty nice. So train with the infantry is actually probably going to be the best one here, because it gives me a sword, it gives me a polearm, 2 pieces of equipment that I desperately want, but look at what it also does. It brings my polearms up to 2, it brings my one-handed up to 1. So, now I can hit next, and then I can choose my biggest achievement, which I can choose to be killing an enemy in battle for a good bit of valor, a lot of renown, and then my one-handed will be where I need it to be. My two-handed gets a point, which is nice, and then my polearms goes up. So I like that one. I don't think any of these others are going to give me any two-handed skill, which is unfortunate, but we can work with that because we've got our 2 in medicine, we've got our 2 in one-handed, we've got our 2 in polearms, which is really what we wanted. This is feeling pretty nice. Okay. So now we need to choose our last bit of background. We can either subdue a raider for some athletics and some one-handed. That's pretty nice stuff. Driving off arrows for tactics. We can get more riding and more scouting. Again, scouting is nice to have. It's a little tricky to raise. So this is a pretty good one, especially since we get some nice riding right off the bat. Tricking the raiders is pretty good. And organizing the travelers gives us some difficult to get points, but these don't really matter that much in the early game. So this is more of a long game strategy, but we can get these points, we can get skills and levels up in a different way. And so that doesn't matter too much. So I'm going to choose Subdued a Raider, because that's going to give me athletics, which is going to be nice to have. It's going to give me one-handed, which is going to be nice to have. I don't have any range skill, but that's okay. I'm not too worried about that. So I'm going to hit next, and now I get to pick my name. And now the name is something else that matters, because if you give yourself one that you don't like, then you just cannot, you can't change it. Your actual name is permanent. So what I'm going to do is just hit random until I find a name that I kind of like, because that's how I tend to do most of this kind of stuff. There we go. Caster. Alright, so now we have our difficulty settings. So the difficulty settings, it's very important that everybody does this exactly this way. We are not babies. We are men. And men play on realistic difficulty. With death enabled. There we go. Now, you might be asking yourself, why did we choose our points that way? You mentioned the perks, but what do they give us? Well, we are about to get into that. But first, we have to make one of the most important choices of all. Do we continue the tutorial or skip the tutorial? This is a critical choice that obviously you cannot undo. And the correct answer is always, always, always continue the tutorial. Because the tutorial will allow us to cheat, which is going to be the focus of the next video. There we go. So, why did I do the things that I did? Well, we will see that as soon as we leave the encampment. Alright, so we have left the encampment. And why, oh why, did we do the things that we did? Well, and we will turn off these tutorials because we don't need them. But why did we do those things that we did? Well, I shall tell you why we did the things that we did. It is so that we can get the perk points. Look. So, each and every focus point came with 10 perk points. The starting skill level for each skill is 5. Your first perk comes at 25 skill level, which means that if you can get 2 focus points into an item at character creation, you are guaranteed to get a perk point right off the bat. Now, some people will say, but should you not focus on something so that you can get a skill up all the way to 55? If you want to do that, you can. That is a perfectly valid way to start your character and make a very nice, very strong, focused character at the very beginning of the game. However, in my experience, not having any points in these other aspects tends to make you a little weaker where there's no need to be, because we can exploit the tutorial. What are we going to do with our one-handed perk? Well, we are going to give ourselves more hit points. What are we going to do with our polearms perk? Well, we're going to give ourselves more hit points. And what are we going to do with our medicine perk? Well, we're going to give ourselves more hit points. And for riding, we're going to give our horse more hit points. Alright, so I'm a brand new character. I've just started. I've got 3 hit points from one-handed, 3 hit points from polearms, and 10 hit points from preventative medicine. Which means that I currently have, as soon as I hit done anyway, 116 hit points. Which is awesome. That is 16% more hit points than other starting characters would have. And while it doesn't sound like a whole lot, 16 extra hit points when your maximum is 100 is quite hefty. And whenever we get our two-handed up to 25, so in 10 levels, when we get two-handed up to 25, we'll be able to go ahead and get extra HP, which gives us 3 more hit points, which will give us very nearly a 20% total hit point gain over other starting characters. Now, There is a disadvantage to doing this, which is being more spread out. But our one-handed is already 35, and that's a perfectly fine skill to focus on, which gives us a shield. So we've got our last little thing that we're going to talk about in this video, which is one of the most important things to make sure that you do in the tutorial, and that is to borrow, and yes, I do mean borrow, your brother's equipment. You see, the game gives you some interesting things. It gives you your Iron Spatha, it gives you your Imperial Spear, it gives you some pretty decent, but not the best, armor. Those boots are actually terrible. It gives you a bad horse. You might as well just get rid of him. Throw him away. You don't need that horse. Stumpers are trash. We do not use stumpers. No. For we are Imperial, of the Imperial lineage, and we will be king! And kings can only ride the best horses. And if you look at your brother, you'll happen to notice that in his civilian outfit, not his battle outfit, but in his civilian outfit, he has a horse called a Pureblood, which is a brokenly powerful horse that we are going to borrow from him. Our brother also happens to have a nice little shield that we can borrow, and oh wow, look at these wrapped leather boots. Now, I don't want to make my brother completely useless in melee combat, but he's got the exact same equipment, sans shield, which is why we had to take it from here, in his civilian outfit. So he doesn't need it, and so we shall be taking it. We've got ourselves some nice starting equipment, which we are borrowing, and I cannot stress that enough. We are only borrowing this equipment from our brother. On the completion of the tutorial, our inventory will be set back to the basics of what we were started with based off of our background choices. The equipment that we're taking here is to help us get a leg up against the early enemies so that we can more easily and effectively kill them, which will allow us to really cheat the tutorial. But that is a video for another time. So I'm going to wrap things up here. I hope that everybody had a good time. If you liked the video, please let me know by going ahead and doing the YouTube things. I'm not going to explain them to you. You should know how to do them. And if you want to hear more of my glorious voice, you can try and catch one of my Twitch streams. I left a link down in the description because I am that awesome. And until next time, keep being awesome. Peace out.